Welcome to the Kindred Journey podcast, the podcast where women share their experiences of stepping into courage when comfort is no longer an option. This is the podcast for connecting in community with women who have been shaped by the liberating to challenging seasons that life endures. I am your host, Leslie. I am a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. I too have experienced these seasons in life, and I want you to know that you are surrounded by a community of courageous, real women here for you. I can't wait to connect, so grab your favorite beverage and join me on this kindred journey. In my conversation this week with Karaleigh Garrison, we talked about what a courageous wife, mom, songwriter, singer, entrepreneur, podcaster she is. In light of Mother's Day, the month of May, I am especially honing in on my interviews with amazing moms. And I'm honored to have her as a guest, and also have her as the guest the week of Mother's Day. And she has not only one, but two podcasts. One, Seeking Sunshine, and her second is Podcast Like a Mother, where she teaches how podcasting can be fun, easy, and sustainable. Karaleigh is deeply passionate about inspiring others to do what lights them up, because she knows that we are all better humans when our cups are full. And I absolutely love that. In this episode, we talk about how she had trials and tribulations through some seasons from 2018 onward, with moving and her husband and sickness and her kids, and just figuring out herself all in the process. And I feel like this episode truly shines light on how strong mothers can be and how much credit we probably don't get sometimes. I feel like Karaleigh's grit and faith and perseverance just really shines through in this episode. We talk about just how she overcame some of these very challenging seasons. I'm very excited to share with you this episode and give her the light that she deserves, because she is a light. If you are interested in signing up for Karaleigh's Podcast Like a Mother podcast creation course, there is a link in the show notes. She makes this course super easy and makes it about how to make podcasting work for the life of a busy mom. You learn how to create an entire show right from your cell phone, and how to fit podcasting into your busy life. Podcasting can be as simple as you let it. Sometimes it can seem overwhelming, and where do I start? And just can get stuck in the weeds with it a little bit. So please check out the link to this course if you are interested or curious to start a podcast, and it is in the show notes. As well, I am hosting my Mother's Day Out retreat this weekend in Boise, Idaho. So the link is also in the show notes for that. If you are relatively in the area, registration does close Friday, May 10th. So be sure to sign up for that if you're interested. The theme is rest, receive, and restore for all of us busy moms. I don't think we take enough time for ourselves to truly just stop and receive. So there's going to be a couple panelists that are going to be there, women professionals that cater to and hone in on moms and families in the Treasure Valley. And there's going to be a yoga class and lunch provided and local wine. So if you're in the area, if you know somebody in the area, please feel free to share the link in the show notes. I would love to have you there. And so please help me welcome Karaleigh Garrison to the podcast. Well, hello, Karaleigh. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a Friday, so I can't complain. I have been looking forward to connecting with you for a while. I crossed paths a few times, and I've listened to your podcast and
Thanks.
excited to get to know you better and hear more about you. But maybe if you could start off with a little bit of an introduction about yourself for the listeners.
Yeah, so I'm Karaleigh Garrison. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I've got two different podcasts. and I'm a podcast coach, so I teach podcasting. And I have 3 kids with special needs, and my husband's been disabled for a decade, so my life's a little bit chaotic.
You wear many hats, it sounds like.
Yes.
And again, I apologize. I'm getting over a little bit of whatever's going on here, so I'll try and keep my coughing and congestion to a minimum.
All
But
good.
before we get started, I just like to share that this is a safe space for you to share your story, and everything that you say here is respected and honored. So please feel free to speak freely and tell your story, because we're all humans of, we dance to different drums, and we're not all the same. So please feel free to just be your authentic full self, and thank you for having the courage to come on and share your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So if something sticks out to you, would you mind sharing a moment or a season in your life where you had to step into courage when comfort was no longer an option?
Yes.
Mhm.
So I have a favorite story that I just love to share because it really changed my life. It changed how I look at the world, and it has changed just how I see things in my life ever since then. And so it kind of I have to give a little pre-bit about how I've always wanted to be a singer, and I've got my music notes behind me on the wall if you
Mhm.
can't see them. And I said at the beginning, I'm a singer-songwriter. I've wanted to sing forever, and when I first went to college at 18, I was auditioning for the School of Music to pursue opera, and then I met and married my husband in, 7 weeks.
Wow.
I know, it was crazy. I was 18 and a half and got married in my first semester at college, and then we actually left without finishing our degrees, and because we just felt called away, and it was, the right thing to do, but we hadn't finished our degrees, and then we went off and had 3 kids, and we moved, to California. We Our college that we went to is BYU in Utah, and we're very religious, and we are of the Mormon LDS faith of the BYU Mormon, the BYU, Utah faith that's very known
Mhm.
for for that.
Yes.
And so we moved off to California, which is where I grew up and where my family lived. And then we moved to Texas, and we had 1 kid in Utah, 1 kid in California, and 1 kid in Texas. And when we lived in yeah. So my story kind of starts, I mean, no one's story starts like
Right.
anywhere. It's always like a journey, but like the beginning of this story, I start in 2018, which is a decade after we got married.
Okay.
And at this like point in time, we had 3 kids, and 2 of them had their autism diagnoses. My youngest had not gotten his yet. And so we were doing this whole dance of doing school full time for 2 of them, and then therapy for 4 hours after school every single day. And then
Wow.
for my oldest was, like, 8, and then 7, and then my youngest was 3 or 4. And then my husband was completely disabled, and he had a whole slew of different diagnoses, from severe debilitating PTSD, depression, anxiety, um, I mean, gosh, with TMJ and like chronic back pain. He walked on a cane. He was only like 33, and he was walking on a cane full time because his leg would collapse out from underneath him and he couldn't walk. But he had this condition called familial episodic ataxia, which is this really rare chromosomal defect that nobody had ever heard of before, including all of the neurologists in San Antonio where we lived. And it took us a long time for him to get this diagnosis. And his disability wasn't something that like came on one day. It was like over a period of like 5 years that it just got worse and worse and worse until he was collapsing at work all the time. So he couldn't work because he kept collapsing, and he'd start trembling, and he would stutter with his speech, and he couldn't talk, and he'd fall to the ground and couldn't carry his own weight, and I'd have to carry him to bed. And he would be in this state for several hours or days before he could get up again. And this these ataxic episodes would be triggered by stress. And this could be stress like doing the dishes or vacuuming or caring for our kids. So he couldn't watch our kids. He couldn't help around the house. He couldn't do anything. And so in 2018 was when we finally, after years of trying, we finally got approved for SSI. So we had had zero income for years before that because I was his caretaker and the caretaker of our kids. And I couldn't work because I was carrying for everybody and he couldn't work. And I was trying to get all these different businesses off the ground, but it was really, really stressful. And so we finally got approved for SSI, which was like a little tiny bit of money. And so life was like tentatively kind of a little bit stable with him at doctor's appointments constantly and our really wild 3-year-old. Like, you've never met a 3-year-old more wild than my Benjamin. Like, I just cannot describe to you. It's wild because he eventually would get his diagnosis later on, but like at the time it was like, what is happening to my life? And then my 7 and 8-year-olds doing therapy 4 hours a day after school. And we were living down the road from my in-laws who were constantly helping us out because my husband was in and out of the hospital all the time because he also had like really severe asthma and like almost like died from that. And like he had major surgery in that whole time. And like life was insane. And so during that period, we felt this call that we needed to move back to Utah to finish our degrees. And we were like, what? That's crazy. Move away from all the therapies that we just got established. Like, we finally got everyone on the meds and the SSI and all the therapies, and my in-laws are here. And like, we just got everything really tentatively like stable. And now we feel like God's telling us to move to a different state where we wouldn't have any of this support, where we would have to refigure out all of the therapies and all the doctors. And it was like, I felt that for a really long time, about a year before we got approved for SSI. And I was like, sorry, God, that's not possible. We don't have the money for that. And I just ignored it. But then the SSI came and I was like, dang, now it's possible. Because
Mhm.
we got some back pay with the SSI. And I was like, now it's actually possible for us to move.
And you
Ugh,
both felt that? You
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And it was it was really strong. It was really strong. And it got to this point where it was so weighing on me that like we have to move. We have to move to Utah and finish our degrees. And I was praying about it one day and I was like, okay, I get it. We're supposed to move. I get that that's the thing. But I was like, okay, God, but like, are we going to be okay?
Mm.
Are we going to survive this? Or like, are we going to be okay? And for the first time in my life, I got this like crystal clear answer, like not just like a feeling, but like words. And it was, it's not just going to be okay. It's going to be amazing.
Mhm.
And then what followed was the worst year of our lives. So it was like, oh, okay. So we took the leap and we moved to Utah, which it's like a 24-hour drive. Like, it's like a good distance. It's not just like, hop on over. No, it's like a big deal. Like, and we experienced a lot of really severe trials in making this move. Like, we tried to rent this one place and they stole several $1,000s from us. And it was like a huge trial. And then we found this other place to live in. And that also had major issues that went wrong. And we had all these different trials that went along with the physical move that were really hard. But we had one thing that just changed our lives forever. We moved in about August, and then in October was when our lives were changed. And right before this, I had what I like to call my Facebook meltdown, where I like
Mm.
went live on Facebook and just like sobbed to the world. And so you have to understand that like I had Aurora, who was 8, and she's high functioning autistic, and she was in her school and doing fine. And like 3rd grade, I want to say. And then I had Benjamin, who was like 3 or 4, and he was in preschool, and he didn't have a diagnosis yet, but it was coming. And then I had Joshua. And Joshua was 7, and he's severely autistic and completely and utterly nonverbal. And he was 7 and in 1st grade or 2nd grade, something like that. And they wouldn't take him at the school she was at because he was so severe. So he had to be in this special school, which took forever to find. And we finally found him just the perfect place to be in. And it was very stressful, but it ended up being a huge gift. But Joshua didn't have a single sound that meant anything. And so when I went on Facebook that day, I was like, we just lost all of our therapies. We just lost everything. We're on now a year-long wait list to get my kids back into all the therapies they've been in. They lost speech and OT and ABA. Like, they lost all of it. And Josh has been in therapy for 5 years, and he's not made any progress in his speech. And I just can't anymore. I just can't with the praying every single night, with watching my 3-year-old pray that his brother's gonna have a voice one day. I can't do it anymore. I give up that Josh is ever gonna say, Mom, or I love you. I can't keep hoping that I'm gonna hear my son's voice because it's killing me. It's killing me to keep hoping for this. And so I publicly gave up that my 7-year-old would ever talk. And looking back, it's like, what a weirdly beautiful moment of surrender. Of I had this whole plan in my head of Josh goes to therapy, he learns how to talk. That's how it works, right? That's what we're taught. That you put your kid in therapy, that's how they learn to talk. And it wasn't working. And I was like, fine, God, it must be your plan that he doesn't learn how to talk. And I'm done hoping and praying for this because it's killing me to watch my 3-year-old's prayer go unanswered. I can't. And so it was only about a week later. It was the first Saturday of October. It's the kind of thing that's etched into my mind that I'll never, ever, ever forget. Because Josh walked out of his room that morning and he looked completely different. He looked like he lost a bunch of weight overnight, a lot of weight overnight. He was skin and bones. You could see his ribs and you could see this thigh gap. And it was what happened to my kid? And it was so bad that I took a picture of him and sent it to his teacher at school. And I was like, did he look like this yesterday? And she was like, no, because I had been what's wrong with me? I've been in college full time and we just moved. Did I just miss that my son is looking so skinny? Did I just miss it somehow? And Josh was sick and he walked out of the living room. And you have to know that Joshua walking anywhere, walking out of the living room and curling up into a ball on the floor was never happened, because Joshua was my kid who we had a lock on the front door because he would run out the front door and open our neighbor's car while they were driving. This was my kid who kept me on my toes every single second because he was constantly a danger to himself. This is my kid who would get into the parking lot and before I could unbuckle my seatbelt, he'd be out the front door because my side doors were child locked, but you can't child lock that front door. He'd be out of his seatbelt and halfway across the parking lot before I could get myself unbuckled to go open people's cars. Josh was my wild child. It was constantly a battle. I have PTSD from trying to keep him safe. So when he slowly walked out of his room and didn't bounce off the walls and didn't run and then curled up in a ball on the floor, it was who is this kid? And I had this split in my brain where part of me was freaking out, like, oh my gosh, she's dying. What is happening here? Like, mama brain, like, what is happening? And then the other half of my brain was like, he's just sick. This happens. He's just sick. Kids get sick. This happens. And hold up. Before you write this off as all bad, maybe it's a little bit of a relief that he's not bouncing off the walls right now. Maybe you'll get to have a little bit of a break this weekend. So I kind of had this like dual brain thing going on. So he was really sick all weekend, just laying on the floor, curled up in a ball. I didn't even have to give him his meds to bring him like down a little bit from his normal ridiculous amount of hyperactivity. Like, it was crazy. So then by Monday morning, he was still sick, and I was going, okay, it's time to take him into the doctor. So I took him to the pediatrician, and he was so weak that I had to carry him in from the car because he didn't want to walk on his own. And I carried him into the pediatrician's office, and he curled up on the floor, and she didn't even look at him. She completely wrote him off. And she was like, it's just a stomach bug. He'll be fine. And I was like, I don't think so. I've got 3 kids. We've done this a few times. Like, this is not my first rodeo. Like, I've never seen a stomach bug like this. And she was like, yeah, but I guess we could get some blood work. But like, he's got autism, and it's really hard to get blood from a kid with autism. So like, just give it a few more days. He'll bounce right back. And she did nothing. She did nothing. And so I carried him back to the car, and we went home. And now remember, my husband and I are still full-time college students with 3 kids at 3 different schools. So we're trading off who's going to their classes and who's missing all their classes to stay home with the sick kids. So a couple days later, I was sitting in my class, and my husband was home, and he texted me a picture of Joshua, and I looked at that picture, and Josh was worse. And his skin was turning gray, and his eyes were all sunken in. Not to mention he was laying in bed, and he never ever would lay in a bed. He only laid on the floor. He would not lay in a bed. And I took one look at that picture, and I was like, no, I'm done. I'm done watching my kid dying in front of my eyes. And I left in the middle of my class, which as a very type A person who like follows all the rules was not a me thing to do, but I was like, I'm done. And I left, and I took him to the ER, and I had to carry him in to the hospital, and they took one look at him, and they knew exactly what was wrong. And they were like, we need to get blood from this kid right now. And I kid you not, this kid who I had to carry into the ER, it took a full team of 5 grown men and me holding him down because he fought like a freaking saber-toothed tiger to get one little teeny drop of blood from his finger. But 1 drop of blood was all it took. And he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And he was in diabetic ketoacidosis, and he was definitely dying. And they transferred us to a different hospital. And we get to this hospital, which, if you're familiar with Utah, is Primary Children's Hospital, and they're very well known for being really amazing. And we get to this hospital, and I'm in such a state of like, what is even happening? Like, pretty sure diabetes is for old fat people, not my scrawny 7-year-old. How is this happening right now? And I'm like, you guys don't understand who this kid is. You're going to give him this medicine, and he's going to come right back to life, and he's going to burn this hospital to the ground. Like, he's going to change the language on all your computers to Japanese, and he's going to tear this place to shreds. Like, you don't know what he's capable of. Like, as soon as he comes back to life, like, this is my worst nightmare, is having this kid in a hospital with computers and like technology and things he can destroy. Like, you don't understand. And they were really amazing. And they actually had a nurse just sit at the doorway all night long, just so I could sleep in case Josh woke up and came back to life. They were really great. And then, of course, all night long, I think it was like every hour they had to get another drop of blood from his finger. But there was no team of adults, of grown men to come save me. It was just me and Josh and him tearing chunks of my hair out all night long to get a new, because, eventually he ran out of blood in his fingers because he was so dehydrated. So I had to use his toes, and he was not a fan of that. Anyways, then the next day, they had me do something called parent training, where I got to learn all about how I would have to watch every single bite of food this kid ate for the rest of his life. And I don't mean like just pay attention. I mean, like, I'm supposed to be calculating how many grams of carbs that handful of Cheerios had. Good luck with that, as I try to explain to his endocrinologist. Anyways, and then I'm supposed to be dosing him for every, time he eats anything, of needles and insulin for the rest of his life, because he's severely autistic and he won't be learning how to do this on his own. And he's not going to be like, yay, let me eat vegetables and healthy food for the rest of my life to make this work. I'm going to eat handfuls of cereal. And I left parent training, and they finally let me go shower and have a moment to myself. And I sat there and I had this moment where I had it out with God, where I was like, what part of this fits anywhere between okay and amazing? Because I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing, definitely not amazing, but this is not even okay. I'm not seeing the okay part of this. How does this fit in the plan? You made me promises, and this does not fit in the promises that were made. And I had this whole thing. And the thing is that that's the moment that I come back to all the time, because we have moments like that all the time. I actually just had a moment like that not very long ago. Just last week, I had another moment like that. We have these moments where we only see things with blinders on, and all we can see is what's happening in front of us right now. And nothing else seems to exist except for the current reality that is tearing us apart. But because I now know what happens next in Josh's story, I know that there's always another chapter. I know that there's always a miracle around the corner that I just can't see yet, when I'm stuck in that blinders on moment of my world is crashing down on me. And so when I'm having another one of those moments, I have to remind myself that there's another chapter to my story, even though I haven't turned the page yet. There's a miracle waiting around the corner. I just need to wait. Hold on. Maybe the thing didn't go the way I planned, but if I can just wait a little bit longer, the page will turn and I'll be able to see it from a different perspective. So we went home from the hospital. We were in the hospital Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Josh went back to school on Monday, and he pooped in the potty for the first time in his life. Just like that. Now, he was 7 years old, and we'd been trying to potty train him forever. For 4 years, we'd been trying to potty train him, but we couldn't get him to poop in the potty. And it was like, well, what happened? It was probably because he finally was eating. He'd been underweight for a really long time. We even had him on prescription medications to try to get him to increase his appetite, but then he was allergic to it, and it was a whole thing. And so he'd been underweight. And then when he was released from the hospital and got on the insulin, he was starving. And that's a thing that happens when kids are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't like, yay, he's eating, now he wants vegetables and healthy food. Yay, no, it was not what was happening. He was eating corn dogs, and only corn dogs, and nothing but corn dogs, and just exclusively corn dogs with lots of ketchup. Oh, so very much ketchup. So like he was eating like 9 corn dogs a day, and we were going to Costco and buying all of the corn dogs that we could get our hands on because that was the only thing he would eat was corn dogs. But he was eating enough corn dogs that he was being regular. And so then we went to school on Monday and he pooped in the potty, and like it was like, oh my gosh, we've been working towards this for 4 years, and just like that, all he needed was diabetes to make this happen. It's been a nightmare for 4 years, and just like that. But what was really amazing was that within a month, he could say all of his colors.
Wow.
My kid who couldn't mimic anything. He couldn't even like mimic. Like he couldn't mirror anything you were saying. Like he didn't have a sound that meant anything. Could say all of his colors. And then by the end of a year, I think it was, I was begging him to shut up because he never ever stopped talking. He just like skyrocketed in his speech from that moment on. And now we're here like 5 years later, and oh boy, he is a 12-year-old that just says anything he wants to say. And I have to remember every single day that I prayed so hard for that kid to say whatever he wanted to say. I prayed for that voice. I wanted it. And his favorite word right now is penis. And he makes penis jokes loudly through all of church. And I'm like, oh, I prayed for that. And it's like so great. I wanted this really badly. And we walk through Walmart and he's like, penis popsicle. And I'm like, oh, yes, prayed for this. I wanted this. And I'm like, I have this thing that I always say. It's like there's blessings in every trial and trials in every blessing. And there's trials in that kid speaking. Oh, my word. He spends a lot of time yelling his demands at me of what he wants. And he sure talks. Boy, he sure says everything that comes to his mind, and it's both beautiful and sometimes it's trialsome. That's a word. But it's amazing to look at something like diabetes that I thought was the worst thing in the whole world in that moment, and to now be able to see it as such a gift. And then the thing is it's like, it wasn't immediately after he was diagnosed that I was like, "Oh, yay! He's had diabetes for 2 days." And I'm like, "Hooray! What a gift." No. No, I was in shock with that whole thing for a long time. This has been many years of processing and so many tellings of this story in the making before I was like, "Oh, I'm starting to see how this became a really beautiful gift." But then the other part of that story was that Joshua was diagnosed in October, and then in December, because we had gone back to BYU to finish our degrees, in December, I auditioned for the School of Music for the second time a decade later. And I was like, this is it. This is my turn. This is my chance. I'm finally going to get to sing opera, and I'm going to get this thing I've been studying for 20 years and dreaming of forever. It's my turn to have my dreams come true, right? Like I was like, this is my moment. So I auditioned in December. And then I got through the first round and I got to the second round, which was in like January. And then I found out in February that I did not get accepted into the School of Music. And you should know that they only let like 3 or 4 people into this very exclusive opera program at BYU. And I was so close to getting in that they actually reached out to me and they were like, don't give up.
Mm.
Please, they like recommended all these other schools I should go audition for. They were like, pursue this. Like, really don't give up. Like, you have something. Do not give up. And I got this email from them and I was like, no, you didn't let me in. I must be the worst singer in the whole world. Like, I will never sing again. I must be terrible. Like, it was really one of those like blinders on moments of like, my world has ended. My dreams are forever dashed. I will never sing again. We all have those moments, right? Where you're like, I have crumbled.
Yes.
Life is over. And so even though I had this whole thing with Josh where like he was like talking, like he was like on this trajectory, I hadn't totally seen it yet. It wasn't like this like boom, life's different. It's when we have these things, it's more like a process of understanding things better and better and better. And so I hadn't quite gotten all the way there yet, and I was having my moment of like, nope, ended. I couldn't sing without crying. I was like so depressed of just like this dream didn't happen exactly the way I had planned it. That must mean that God gave me a voice by mistake and it wasn't supposed to be, right? But as I went through the following months and Josh was rapidly increasing in his speech and I was watching this. And there comes this point after like something really terrible happens and it can be something like really 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 terrible or something that you just think is really really terrible
Mm-hmm.
where the shock of it starts to fade and you start to have more clarity.
Mm.
And at the clarity point, I started going, huh, you know, if Josh's path to having a voice, it didn't go the way I planned. Like I was like therapy, therapy, therapy equals voice. It didn't work like that. I wonder if my plan of Karaleigh auditions for the School of Music, she gets into the School of Music and then she gets to sing. Maybe there's a different path to me singing that could also work. Maybe there's a different plan here. Huh. I wonder if that's possible. Maybe it doesn't have to look the way I thought it did. Maybe it could look a different way. Huh. And I started having these kind of realizations click into place like, I actually don't like opera that much. I actually only started studying opera because someone in high school told me I was fat and shouldn't be on stage. And I let that one thing that one person told me that one time change the entire trajectory of like my life for like 20 years. Like I stopped writing my own music and started being like, well, I can only be the fat lady on stage. I can just be like, that's the only option for me. So that's it. And that was the only thing I even thought was possible forever. Like for 20 years, I was like, that's it. It's the only path for me, even though I didn't love opera. I loved singing it. I liked being like the diva and like having the high notes, but I don't like listening to opera. I just kind of liked singing it. And then I was like, oh, so I don't love opera that much. And then I had these realizations of like, wait a minute, if I actually got this thing I wanted so badly and I was the star of the show, I would be gone in rehearsals and on stage like every night. Wait a minute, I don't want that. I'd be away from my kids every night. That's not what I want for my life. I want to be there for my kids. I don't want to be gone every night in rehearsals and shows. And then I was studying costume design and makeup design in college and I was watching as all the other people got what I wanted and they were at the front of the stage and I was backstage designing their costumes and makeup. And then I started realizing if it was reversed and I got to be the star of the show and be at the front of the stage, somebody else would be designing my costumes and my makeup. And someone else would be directing me in what words to sing and how to sing them and where to stand. And I was like, wait a minute. I want to design my own costumes. I want to design my own makeup. I want to choose what to say. I want to choose what I wait, I want to be in charge. I would hate that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe this thing I dreamed of for 20 years would have not been a very good dream for me after all. Maybe there was a little bit of a gift in not getting into the School of Music. I found the gift in diabetes, and then I was able to find the gift in not getting into the School of Music. And because I've been able to find the gifts in those things, it's helped me find the gift in lots of other things that have been really hard in my life. Because there's gifts in everything if you look hard enough and long enough. And sometimes it takes a really long time of looking. And it's okay if it takes a long time of looking. Sometimes we need that time and that space and that perspective before we see it. And that's okay. And so I pivoted and I stopped pining for opera and this dream that turned out it wasn't really what I wanted in the first place. And I pivoted to back to songwriting, which I hadn't done since high school. And it turned out that was exactly where I belonged in the first place. And I graduated college and I wrote and produced my own album, and it's called Seeking Sunshine, which is the same name as my podcast, which I started the same time that I started writing and producing my album. So they kind of went together. And now I write custom podcast intro songs for people, and I get to do it from home. And I thought that singing had to look like me being away from my kids and me being on stage. I thought that me speaking to people and all these things that I wanted and performing had to look like me being on stage and me being away from my kids all the time. And then I found podcasting and it was like, wait, I can write podcast songs. I can speak to people from home. I can I can do it from home. I can do it with my kids around me. And it was like, "Oh, that's how this all worked in the most beautiful way that I never could have imagined, because I didn't see that. It wasn't part of the things I knew existed when I was
Mm.
creating my life plan at, like, 12 or whatever." And so, it really did turn out so much more amazing than I ever thought possible. And then the other part, I guess, of the story is that over these last 5 years, my husband, his health has improved rapidly. He's not walking on a cane anymore. He has gotten off of 12 different medications and switched to medical cannabis, and his life has improved so much. He has had a job for the last, like, 18 months, and he's in the top 3 of his nationwide company, and he's, like, doing amazing. Like, it took a long time, but it ended up being really amazing.
Wow. I have so much that I would love to unpack with you. First and foremost, I just want to take a minute to recognize how strong you are. I don't know if you do realize that, but you are so strong. I mean, caregiving to your husband and your children and going through so many um unexpected turns in your life, like you said, expectations that we have of how our life is going to build out. And your opera dream wasn't even your dream. It was somebody that said something horrible to you in high school that you fixated on and you ran with because you felt like that's where you belonged, and that's not at all where. And we get stuck, like you said. I love the thing about the blinders, that we get so stuck in our in the moment where we are and how deep and heavy it feels, that we don't see the next, that there's purpose in our pain, and I am just so awestruck by your story, and I appreciate you sharing everything that you shared, because man, I want to be a stronger woman because of you, because I seriously feel like you're paving a way, and your message is so strong and um so empowering and impactful. And I didn't know all of that, so thank you for sharing, and just the beautiful message, and trusting. And you're still, you're trusting in God through this entire process. And I know there's the times of why this, or why that? And then you go to 5 years later, I prayed for that. So there we go, so I just, I just love your perspective and your input on all these, like I said, twists and turns that you've experienced since 2018. And I'm not going to do math on the top of my head of how many years ago that was.
I think we're at 5. No, we're at 6. It's 2024.
Yeah.
Last year was 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. And time flies when you're having fun, right?
Right.
Yeah, anyways, I love so I guess when you were in those moments, something that kind of kept coming to me when you were talking was, you have these blinders on, but then you started to kind of piece together, it sounds like kind of an aha moment or a God nod, maybe in the hospital with when your son had diabetes, like there will be a next chapter. I will turn the page, I will move forward from this. Is that kind of when you started to gather these nuggets or these, because I feel like when I'm in it and I'm in something so deep and I have those blinders on, I'm like confirmation bias. Yep, this is the way it is. It's supposed to be shitty. Like, I almost like fall into that trap of that narrative versus like, it sounds like your perspective kind of shifted, like, okay, like I'm grateful for this instead of, oh, yep, it's the way it is. It's the way it's supposed to be.
I'd say it depends on the scenario. I think that one I was so in survival mode that there were no thoughts. It was just putting one foot in front of the other, like so much sleep deprivation. Because like type 1 diabetes, you're literally up every 3 hours checking their blood sugar until you get a Dexcom or the blood glucose monitor, which we didn't get for like 3 years. Like you're up every few hours, making sure they're not like dead. So
Yeah.
it's like there's no sleep happening with
Right.
that. And I guess in some ways I'm lucky that my husband has insomnia, so he's often the one who does this no sleep thing for me because he's already getting no sleep.
Yeah.
So he's often the one doing middle of the night stuff for me.
That's
So yeah, and when you're in that survival sleep deprived mode, it's you can't trust whatever thoughts are going on. So I
right.
can't sit here and tell you that like, oh, I had this great perspective. No, I've told this story a lot of times and
Sure.
you gain so much in telling your story. Like like everyone needs to be telling their story 100 times because it'll change how you look at your life. It will
I love that.
change like your history is defined by how you think about it right now. Like the past does not exist. What exists is how you think about the past. And the more times that you tell your story, like that's what makes it so. Like that event, it only exists in the way I tell it.
Mhm.
And so the more that I'm like, oh yeah, perspective. It's like, well, there you go. No, I was a hot mess.
Sure.
I
Of
was
course.
such a mess in those moments, but I've also told that story a lot of times, and it's so much more valuable to me and to everyone else when I can tell it with such a pretty bow on it and such a pretty picture with the perspective. It helps me as I look at future stories. Like, I had a bad thing happen last week, and I was like, okay, this sucks really bad right now, but it won't always suck. But it sucks really bad right now, but it won't always suck. But it sucks really bad right now, but it won't always suck. And I couldn't see how it wouldn't always suck, but I knew somewhere in my brain that it wouldn't always, that eventually I'd be able to see another chapter. Like just knowing that another chapter exists is really helpful,
Mm-hmm.
even though you can't see it. Just to know that it exists. It's really helpful.
Absolutely. Well, I love the way your enthusiasm and animation and how I mean, this won't be a video podcast, but I'm not there yet. But I just love how you share your story and with just your way, your storytelling. You have a great animation. I think I don't know if this is has been divulged to you yet or not. When you guys you and your husband both had the calling of moving back to Utah, do you feel like it was this season of your life or the events and the series of things that have kind of unfolded over the past 5, 6 years is the reason, like you said, you moved away from doctors that were in place and family and a little bit of comfort, right? Like you really did step out on a limb and move to another state, and you were familiar with it with school, but um has that kind of unveiled itself through these experiences and challenges? Like you said, the hospital that your son went to was one of the most well-known best hospitals for children. So do you have any light on that or clarity on that?
Oh yeah, one of the most clear reasons that we eventually saw, Texas is really humid.
Mm,
It's known that Texas is very humid, and my husband had really bad asthma and was actually hospitalized multiple times and had to use like EpiPens for his asthma, which is like a real thing. Like people
wow.
use, like we had doctors fight us on whether or not it was a real thing to use EpiPens for asthma, and I'm like, he was prescribed them for his asthma. His asthma when we moved to Utah entirely disappeared.
Wow.
Like it had been like life and death asthma, level asthma in San Antonio to non-existent in the dry Utah climate.
Wow.
Like he was getting chronic bronchitis all the time, like chronic, like really bad in Texas. I cannot remember the last time he had bronchitis living in Utah.
Wow.
So like just that one example,
Hmm.
like I could complain about Utah. I have plenty of complaints about Utah. I'm not like, yay, I love Utah. But we have seen miracles. We have seen so many miracles. And there are incredible people here that we never would have met. And we were very, very blessed for following that. And there's beautiful, amazing people in Texas too. Like uh, just FYI. Um, but when you follow the path that is right for you in whatever moment, whatever that looks like, that's when miracles happen. That's where the magic lies.
I love that. I think that's a good mic drop right there. Oh my gosh. Well, everything that you've shared, and there's so many good nuggets in there that I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this because I was just like entrenched in listening to what you were saying. I was not even trying to take notes. I was just like, uh-huh, yes. I can relate with you through the trials and the wilderness and the waiting. It's I think, we talked a little bit about this before we hopped on the record. Is like finding courage through the waiting. And that is
Mm,
such a humbling place to be
so
because you truly have no control over where, like you said, it's if it's your purpose and your path that you need to take it, because and that's what feels right, and that's where you got to let go, and in your scenario or my scenario, let go and let God, because you really don't have the control that you think you do, even though you, like
yeah.
you said, you kind of were holding on to that control with opera and having a fixed expectation, and this is how it's supposed to be, or the speech, like this is the end result, like 2 + 2 = 4, but it's not always like that with our lives. We're humans, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I had
um,
been wanting to do music forever. I had been trying to pursue music. I mean, man, for so long. Like at the whole decade before that, I was in this battle in my brain of like, I shouldn't be singing. I should just be a mom. And like, how
mm,
do I do music now? And how am I supposed to anything? And it was like, I couldn't figure it out. And now I'm like, oh, I see ways that I could have done more things, but I didn't know. I was so much in that survival mode and that caretaking mode. and it just wasn't time yet. And I didn't really realize that I could trust that it would happen eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's true for you too. Like, you can trust with 100% certainty that that thing you're waiting for is gonna happen. I promise.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna happen. There's no doubts. It's just that trusting, and we get really tempted to be like, I don't know. Is it? Are we sure? Is it gonna happen? Do I really trust? And it's really easy to doubt that. And when you can just trust that the things that you want, they're waiting for you.
Mm.
And if you're waiting for the timing, just trust that the timing is going to work out so perfectly.
Yeah, I think that's so on point. And I think, something that just comes to me is that I feel like God created you to persevere. I think that you're so strong, and to persevere through everything you've been through, and to see the outcome, and to shift what you thought, and just anyways, I know you've told the story, and it's been a process, and so it's not like we're in it right now, but like I just see perseverance through you and what you're doing, and keep doing what you're doing, and keep shining your light. And I just admire you for all the things, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And before we wrap up, if you wouldn't mind sharing hindsight 2020, what would you have told your old self before stepping into that moment and season of courage, knowing what you know now?
So, I actually wrote a song about this, and I've said a couple of lines from the song as we've gone through it, so it won't be totally unfamiliar. It's called "Wait," and the
Mm.
chorus is, "But wait, maybe it doesn't have to look the way they said it did. And wait, maybe it's not too late to change your mind or change the world. Don't give up just yet. Wait." And I wrote that song because that was what I needed to hear
Mm.
for so long. That was exactly what I needed to hear. And I still need to hear that, which is why it's really great, because something we all need to hear a lot.
Well, what a healing process songwriting has probably been for you. Uh, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful that you turned it into a song, because and now I'm going to go listen to it. I have listened to your album actually, and your
Yeah.
Christmas album during the holiday time, and but wow, I
Thanks.
didn't even correlate the music part of your healing journey through all of this process as well.
Yep. And
So
that song is on the Seeking Sunshine album, and it's out. So it's on Spotify and Apple and all the places.
awesome. Okay, well, I will be sure to include all the links and everything that you shared on the show notes as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
But before we do wrap up, I would love for you to share where listeners can find you, and how they can connect with you if they are starting a podcast. I know you have 2 podcasts right now. That might be something that you could share here with the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my website, CaraleigHgarrison.com, is just sort of, if you're looking for anything, is all going to be on there. Like there's a page that's like, here's all the social media things. But then I've got Seeking Sunshine podcast, Seeking Sunshine album, and then my other podcast is called Podcast Like a Mother, and
Mm.
it's where I'm teaching easy 20-minute or less podcast episodes about how to start your own podcast. And then I am a podcast coach. So if you want to learn how to podcast, that's also up on my website.
Awesome. Well, Carolee, thank you so much for coming on today, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate your story, and you sharing your courageous season through the wilderness out there with everybody. And I hope somebody can take. I took lots of good nuggets away, so hopefully at least they could help some listeners out there with some courage.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining me and listening to the Kindred Journey podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please consider taking the time to rate and review the podcast, and share this episode with family and friends who you think might enjoy it. Your positive feedback helps me reach more courageous women like you. This is my passion project, so without you, I wouldn't be here doing this, and I deeply appreciate your support. Until next time.